Happiness through curiosity on TRS Clips. You've also spent time in Syria.
Yeah.
We're going to switch into talking about Syria.
Okay.
Why did you choose to go there, dude? Like, I have two impressions of Syria. One are the ISIS videos that used to be viral on WhatsApp about 10 years ago, where they'd show beheadings and all that.
Yeah.
And the second is meeting Syrians all over the world who are working in hospitality usually for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's why you end up meeting them.
Yeah.
Very good looking people again.
Yeah.
And they're almost embarrassed to say they're from Syria.
These days, when I used to meet a lot of them in Australia or America or whatever, or in Syria proper, they're not even remotely embarrassed. They weren't. I don't recollect having experience since the civil war started, because all my visits to Syria were pre, and that was the last one was about 2006, when the Israelis started bombing Lebanon, South Lebanon, and we all had to get evacuated.
You were part of the evacuation?
Well, I got evacuated to Cyprus.
Really?
Yeah.
Why were you in Lebanon, dude?
I was in Syria.
Oh, okay.
But the university said, you can't be there. You have to get evacuated because our insurance doesn't cover you.
What
I
were
was
you
still studying. I was doing my international relations at that
in
time.
Syria?
No, in Australia. But I was doing a semester at the University of Damascus learning Arabic. I never learned any Arabic.
Yeah?
I got to know lots of Syrian men in the biblical sense of that word, but I did not. I learned to swear profusely in Arabic because, I think learning a language, you first need to learn all the
Galis.
swear words. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. What was Syria like before?
Amazing. I think it's my favorite country in the Middle East. So, like we discussed the last time, I find Iranian food very dry, and the excitement goes off after about 2 to 3 days. Syrian food I think it eclipses every other Middle Eastern cuisine. Turkish cuisine is on a big high these days. I think Syrian food is much more sophisticated than Turkish food. It's more sophisticated than Lebanese or Israeli food or Jordanian food or Iraqi food even. Very cultured people. There is so much history concentrated in that area. And, people don't realize historically, there were 3 cities in which today you think of Syria and Iraq as 2 separate countries, right? But historically, there were 3 cities in which the power of the Middle East revolved around: Damascus, Aleppo, and Baghdad. And Baghdad, of course, historically, all these cities are thousands of years old. We think of Baghdad as an Arab Muslim city, but people tend to forget that Tisfun, which was the Sassanid Persian capital, had been the capital of the Persian Empire for a few hundred years, way before Islam was even born, right? And 2 of these cities are in Syria. So imagine how much culture is accumulated there in a relatively compact tract of land, where so much history that we know has happened. So many people that you talk about are, you're walking where Mongol armies came, where Turkish armies came, where Jesus probably walked, things like that, which is very humbling. There is so much culture out there. There is so much architecture out there. And the people are just lovely to talk to.
Could you also give some small geopolitical context on what happened? Why did the shit go down?
Yeah. So look, Syria is one of those places which has minority rule. So it's largely a Sunni majority, but you have this a very powerful Christian minority and a very powerful Alawite minority. And the Alawites are a Shia sect of Islam. And it's basically the Alawites and the Christians got together to screw over the Sunnis, kind of. And that's kind of connected largely to Lebanon. Lebanon is an artificial creation, right? The French, when they took over Syria, it used to be an Ottoman province. And at the end of the First World War, when Germany, Austria, and Turkey were defeated, the Ottoman Empire was defeated, Syria became a French province. And there was a large concentration of Christians in coastal Syria, and the French wanted to create an artificial Christian majority, which is how they created Lebanon. Right? So there's a lot of this artificial carving up of states going on out there. But anyway, what was left was a Christian and Alawite majority who anyway controlled the businesses and things like that. Very rich, very enterprising and things. Generally, if you're a minority, you tend to, not all minorities, but several minorities tend to do much better. And they've been in control for the last 30, 40 years at least, starting with even before Bashar al-Assad, who's current President Assad's daddy. And brutal. I mean, they're not nice, I guess. I mean, that's not a region where you turn the other cheek, which is why when people tell me that Jesus asked, if you get slapped, turn the other cheek, I find that very hard to believe. Anybody who's in the Middle East will tell you it's not a turn the other cheek kind of society. Nasty, but effective, very secular. They're a conservative society, but there is a lot of open talk of Islam. But, again, the problem is, I have to give you so much context to this because the belief is that if it's a Muslim country, it's a closed country. Syria is not like that. They're very modern people, right? Women would walk around in skirts and things like that, right? Women wouldn't cover their hair. It was a dictatorship, of course. You couldn't say things about the ruler and so on and so forth. But my impression of it was always glorious. You could have fantastic historical conversations. You could have, you were literally never more than about an hour or two drive away from some fantastic piece of history.
A lot of which has been destroyed now.
Not completely destroyed, surprisingly.
Okay.
History has a way of surviving.
Okay.
So even when the Taliban, first Aurangzeb destroyed the Bamiyan Buddha's faces, then the Taliban destroyed what was left of the Bamiyan Buddhas, but you still have the two, the niches that were carved into the thing. So you still have a sort of, there was limits to what they could destroy.
Okay. What went down?
What went down was really climate change. People don't realize this. We spoke about Aleppo and Damascus. Damascus is in the south. It's always been the southern power center. And Aleppo, or Halab as it's called, was the northern power center. Always in direct competition with each other. Vicious competition with each other, historically.
Because the minority and majority?
No, this has generally been that when you have two big cities that are both economically very powerful, they create the governor. If one conquers the other, the governor of the other always gets too big for his boots and rebels against this one. Right? Okay. Because they're both kind of city superpowers in their own right. What happened was you had a prolonged period of drought in the north and in the Sunni north. And there was a massive population movement that happened because of the drought from the north to the south, which completely upset the demographic balance and things like that. Resource competition, demographic balance disturbed, a lot more. And when you're not doing very well, these identity begins to matter. Before that, there was a lot of intermarriage between Sunni and Alawite, things like that. They really didn't care about these things. It started mattering afterwards. And so when things go from bad to worse, and when the Arab Spring starts off in Tunisia, spreads to Egypt, and they overthrow the Egyptian government at that point, Hosni Mubarak, here they think they can pull this off. False hope, or maybe real hope. They didn't think it was false hope. They thought it was real hope. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, we can say it was false hope. Led to a nasty crackdown by Syrian security forces, which was expected, of course. And then a lot of foreign interference to convert it into a full-blown civil war. And at that time, the Sunni countries, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, were all invested in turning it back into a Sunni state because the Alawites are a Shia sect. There's lots of different opinions on this, but they were the primary launching base for Hezbollah, which is the Shia Lebanese organization mostly fighting Israel, technically, but mostly trying to carve out a Shia supremacy within Lebanon, supported by Iran. And nobody, well, like we discussed, the Saudis and the Emiratis and all the Sunni states don't like Iran because they're Shia. And they wanted to get rid of Assad because he was too dependent on Iran, too close to Iran. If you can bring a Sunni power out there, let's do it.
Okay. What was America's narrative about interfering? Again, democracy, liberty, all those. Like,
I'm at the stage right now where if an American says freedom and democracy, I'm kind of getting ready to punch them in the face. I never want to hear an American say freedom. I love America. I mean, but the moment they say freedom and democracy, it's just really irritating because this guy is lobotomized. He's never had an original thought. He's just been brainwashed on whatever shit he's been taught by the state, and he's just regurgitating talking points.
What went down after? So I'm assuming that there was a long-standing battle between the rebels and the security forces.
So after that, it was basically a nasty civil war, right? The Sunnis gathered up against the sort of Christian Alawite ruling class, and that got interspersed. You remember we spoke about how Paul Bremer screwed up things in Iraq and turned all the Baathists who was very secular, even by Indian standards, into terrorists effectively. They started migrating into Syria, training up these guys to create the state that they lost. Because Iraq was a Shia majority, but with a Sunni ruling class. Saddam Hussein was a Sunni. And so they wanted to recreate that sort of Sunni state, except here it'd be more legitimate because Sunnis are in a majority. And you had people who were Baathists, who were meant to be secular, turning into ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And these people used to be, rolled out at 5-star hotels in Paris and London saying, oh, this is secular. I mean, there wasn't anything remotely secular about these people. They were real religious obscurantists, nasty characters.
What is this Paris thing you said?
Paris, everybody goes to Paris, because Paris is a nice, expensive city. It's Instagrammable. So all these rebel conferences usually happen in Paris or London. Because, this rebellion business, it's a business. Okay? They're not these lofty, idealed individuals. They're there for the money. And what they're looking for is basically business class junket, some fame, staying in the famed hotels of Paris and London, drinking champagne, schmoozing. Usually those intelligence agencies ply them with prostitutes of any denomination that you want. And that's what happens out there. So every time the West says that this is a great dissident leader or rebel leader, I'm like, yeah, give me a break. Nobody even knows who this guy is.
Okay. What went down in the next 5 years?
So what went down was everybody interfering out there. So that after the security forces cracked down, there's a point of no return. Like we'll keep abusing each other, but then finally when I throw the punch, that's when our friendship ends, and then it's just all downhill from there. And this was everybody else coming in, supplying the other party with arms, destroying the balance of power. Had nobody interfered, maybe Syrian forces would have gained control of the situation in about a few months to a year. But because everybody started supplying these so-called rebels with arms and things like that, direct military intervention. Turkey used to keep coming across the border, sending its tanks and fighter planes to shoot down Syrian aircraft.
To shoot down the Syrian military?
Military.
Okay, so they were also supporting the rebels.
They were totally. I mean, Erdogan is the biggest father of Al-Qaeda. Eastern Turkey is like everybody who fled from Afghanistan or Iraq landed up in Eastern Turkey, Anatolia, and turned it into Al-Qaedistan. It's the nastiest characters you can get, you will find out there. And
all this is in the last 15 years.
Yeah. Since 2011, actually. So in the last 8-9 years. And suddenly people who are Al-Qaeda nasty terrorists who did 9/11 became moderate Muslims who seek peace. Syria couldn't retaliate against Turkey because Turkey is a NATO member. If you hit a NATO member, that is a collective declaration of war on all of NATO.
So they were just taking the bullets from Turkey.
They had to. They had no other option. And that is why it has continued for so long till the Russians came in. And so the Russians decided enough was enough. And this shows you how badly Putin miscalculates. Putin thought that the West shedding crocodile tears for Syrian refugees, because remember, that became a huge issue. There were about 2-3 million Syrian refugees who went into Europe. He thought that they genuinely wanted a stable Syria so that all these refugees could go back home. They didn't realize it was a game it was a geopolitical game. He's quite naive in this way. So he actually decides to intervene in Syria and stabilize the situation in favor of Assad. And Europe and the West just goes apeshit at him. He genuinely thought the Europeans would be grateful. All my friends in the Kremlin thought, they were surprised at the European reaction. They're like, look, we're trying to help you guys so that more refugees don't come. And that's not the way Europe saw it. Right? And, but once Russia goes in, see, Turkey and Israel will bomb Syrian planes and Syrian soldiers. They won't dare bomb Russian planes and Russian soldiers. Turkish planes did shoot down 2 Russian aircraft, I think 5-6 years back, just immediately after the Russian intervention. And that became really nasty because both those pilots parachuted out. They were shot, captured, tortured by ISIS or some Al-Qaeda related moderate secular rebel groups on camera. And it took the Ukraine invasion to set relations between Turkey and Russia, well, even before they change alliances very quickly, to set that right. But Russia's intervention is what brought stability to Syria.
Why do we see so many videos of human beings being burnt and their heads being cut off? Is it propaganda?
Yeah.
A lot of it is propaganda.
A lot of it is propaganda. And it's not new. It's historical propaganda. It's just the same old methods done with new visual mediums like cameras and WhatsApp and high production quality.
Earlier, it used to be newspapers and gossip.
And even before that, when Genghis Khan and the Turks used to do it, it used to be as simple as chopping off your heads outside the city walls and putting it on the spike. Or public torture. I don't know if people know this, but when you go to Humayun's tomb, have you been to Humayun's tomb in Delhi? If any of you live in Delhi or are going to Delhi, go to Humayun's tomb. And before you enter, there's a chabutra or platform on the left. Apparently, that's an execution platform. Everybody used to come to watch an execution like a picnic. And the Mughal method of execution was your head would be placed on a platform and an elephant would climb on it and crush your head. And see, this was meant to deter crime. But it used to be a picnic. You used to pack biryani and kebabs and go watch the execution of the day. And we shouldn't be surprised about this because the last public execution in London was 10 years after the London Metro, the London Underground, came online. So for a full 10 years, you could take the world's first tube or metro or underground to go watch a public execution in London.
It's a way of people in power to show their power.
Yes.
And to have a control over the masses.
Yes.
So, okay, what's the Syrian version of it when you see really ghastly videos of men being burnt alive and screaming and becoming kebabs in front of you?
Basically, the group in question is trying to say, if you want to fight us, if you get captured, this is what is going to happen to you.
Okay.
Don't cross me.
Okay.
You'll regret it.
And this is ISIS.
ISIS, Al-Qaeda, all of them do this. ISIS does this at a much higher level. Al-Qaeda has been much more resilient than ISIS because ISIS did it to the point where, we discussed in the last podcast, Khomeini, who alienated everybody in a different way. He was nowhere near as extreme as ISIS is, though he wasn't nice. ISIS took it to the next level and pissed off literally everybody, for every damn thing.
What's the 2023 reality of Syria right now? Keeping all factors included. When did you go there, dude?
Last time was 2006. Yeah.
Okay, so it's been a while.
I've been trying to go back since then. The problem is I've accumulated so many Israeli stamps on my passport. Every time I've tried applying for a visa, they just keep saying, no. You are a Zionist spy.
Okay.
And they go through my Twitter timeline and see a lot of support for Israel. So they're like, hey, you're definitely a Zionist spy. You're probably a closet Jew.
Okay. Do you know what the ground reality is today?
I still have a lot of friends. So it's not direct. It's what I hear from them. A lot of them, not a lot, but some of them have returned back to Syria. It's largely peaceful, except in the north, where there's some kind of about 5-kilometer zone that is still under Turkish occupation, which by Turkish occupation I technically mean Al-Qaeda, ISIS, lawless area where, like the wild, wild west where Al-Qaeda and ISIS operate with impunity, but largely it is back to peace.
Fully.
You will never have it fully because, once a society has been brutalized that way, societal norms. See, there's something fundamentally like you and I will not go kill somebody because of the way we've grown up. But when society has completely broken down and you've been behaving like animals for the last 5-6 years, you had that freedom to go kill somebody and take away his soup or bread or whatever. It'll almost come to you like a reflex reaction even when peace comes back in.
Which means that in daily conversation and daily moments, there's still that little edge in personality.
There's still that edge.
So if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to TRS Clips for more.